I have an announcement, Joe, just to let you know.
Oh, that's great. I understand you also do, Councillor Silovitz?
I have an announcement too. Thank you, Joe.
Good. I have an announcement to make too. It won't be official till a week from now. But great news at the York Region Transit about the subway for Richmond Hill. Great news.
Good afternoon, members of council. We are actually now live streaming.
Okay, well, members of council, we are live streaming now. It's 2 o'clock. I'm going to call this meeting to order and ask you all to stand for the playing of our national anthem. Okay, members of council, you have an agenda before you. I'm going to make an announcement first regarding the COVID-19 pandemic. Due to the efforts to contain the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic and to protect all individuals, city facilities will not be open to the public to attend council and committee meetings until further notice. So we don't have a public forum. There are no members of the public that have indicated a desire to speak to council. So we go over to council announcements, and the two councillors have indicated a desire to make an announcement. I'll start with Councillor Karen Silovitz. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Monday, March 8th was International Women's Day, a singular calendar day celebrated the world over to recognize and honor planet Earth's women and girls and their accomplishments. Last year, 2 Richmond Hill residents, Pat Pollock, chair of the Mayverne Area Residents Association, also known as MARA, and Deborah Negra of the Knitters Attic, which is located in our downtown heritage core, wanted to honor the efforts of frontline workers and those who have been active in the community during the COVID-19 pandemic. They also wanted to make something to memorialize those Richmond Hill residents we have so sadly lost as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Tomorrow on March the 11th, we will recognize all those lives lost by lowering our flags. So these 2 amazing Richmond Hill women came up with the idea of designing and making a white knitted Afghan quilt to commemorate the events of the COVID pandemic. With thanks to a total of 14 knitters who participated in the making of this unique piece, the Richmond Hill COVID-19 Afghan is a knitted piece that contains 19 squares of icons representing Canada and a center panel specifically designed for Richmond Hill, which is surrounded by a border of maple leaves. I want to thank Pat and Deborah and all the knitters for their remarkable work bringing this special piece to Richmond Hill and for their tireless efforts to find a deserving home for this beautiful finished commemorative piece. My thanks also to Darren Solomon, CEO of the Richmond Hill Public Library Board, who took the time to speak with Pat and accepted this Afghan as a donation to the Richmond Hill Public Libraries for Richmond Hill. This 56-inch wide by 80-inch long, made by hand with love and care, commemorative Afghan now has a home and will be permanently and publicly displayed, hanging on a wall at our Richvale Public Library, located on Pearson Avenue in Ward 5. The installation is expected to take place today or tomorrow. To all the local women who made this possible, we honor and appreciate you and your notable efforts. And to all the wonderful, nurturing women of Richmond Hill and York Region and all parts beyond, we honor and appreciate you every day and every night of every year. Happy International Women's Day 2021. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Syllabus. That sounds fabulous. Next is Councillor West.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, thank you, Councillor Silovitz. I actually got a chance to see that Afghan in its final form. It really is a work of art. I wanted to take this opportunity to just let everyone know on March the 21st from 10 till 12, I'll be hosting the 5th annual Ward 4 Richmond Hill Maple Syrup Festival. We had the dubious honor last year of, I think, being the first community event that got canceled because of COVID, but this year we're planning a virtual event, and it's actually coming together really nicely. There's a lot of fun activities for the whole family to enjoy. It's a little different than the live and in-person event that has become so popular over the years. But I think it'll be a lot of fun for people to still be able to celebrate spring and maple syrup. I know that, in the West family, spring is definitely a time that we associate with maple syrup, and it's something that we've always enjoyed and celebrated. So I would hope that we could have the rest of the community to celebrate with us and celebrate spring. So you can register by going to my website. It's davidwest-richmondhill.ca. Because it's a virtual event, there'll be a need to register for the webinar portion of it, but there's also activities for all the kids to participate in, including a scavenger hunt and a number of other things as well. And I will say that there are some very sweet prizes that can be won as well. And I can't tell you what they are, but they do go really well with maple syrup and pancakes. So that'll be it for me today. And hopefully we'll see you on the 21st of March. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Munch, you have an announcement?
Good day. I apologize to members of council public for being late. I couldn't log in time. I like Pancake Day too, so I look forward to. I like maple syrup, and it's calorie free that day, by the way. So I would like to just make a couple notes, if I may. First of all, I'd like to. In my last council meeting, I apologize. On February the 14th, we had an unfortunate incident whereby we had a person that was a marathon runner go on and ran his normal route and had a heart attack. And that person was Bernie Kushner, who is very well known to many of us on council. And I'd like to just, if I can, give a moment of silence to him and his family. He did a lot for Richmond Hill. And I'd like to apologize, council, that I wanted to bring it up at last council meeting. We had a lot going on and kind of missed that. But I think, first of all, I'd just like to, if we can all just give a moment of silence to a man that had a lot to do with us here and really helped us do what we do here and should be recognized. So if I can just ask for everybody to give 10 seconds of silence, I'd really appreciate that. So if I may.
Oh, okay, very well, Councillor Munch. So we'll do that. I don't see any objections. Okay.
So, okay, so sorry. And the second thing, I just want to make a quick announcement. I want to thank everybody for that. I just want to remind everybody that when we talk about all the things that we talk about and have different points of view, I regret, for those that may not know, that Loblaws is closing in Richmond Hill, and that No Frills is also going to be amalgamating into the Bernard area. And it's going to be the effect of at least 150 good paying jobs here, and going to lose an icon. And there's other changes that are happening in that area. So I'm sad for the people that are going to be losing their jobs. I'm sad to be losing an anchor tenant like Loblaws and losing what they provide to the community. There've been several members of council who reached out to me and the residents, and I thank specifically Castro Liu for making it known to me when he did, and others. So I just want to say that everybody should know that it's hard when people come here and invest and we lose jobs and we lose an anchor tenant like that. The ramifications of how we do our business has an effect, and there's some other changes that are coming down that I can't disclose yet, but there's some other things that are happening that are going to affect how we live, work, and play here in Richmond Hill, and the residents really do want that. We just so you know, to give you a perspective, the Yonge and Bernard area has 10 grocery stores today within 4 kilometers. And if you look at the density of Skydome, for example, they have 1. So many of the retailers with COVID and others are just absolutely being impacted dramatically. We have a lot of choice and opportunity here. And some of those retailers and some of those investors that are coming forward are not seeing the return, and they cannot financially absorb it. So we need to make sure that when we're doing our policies and procedures and putting our plans in place, it does affect that. And I'm really sad for the employees, several of which many of those employees live in Richmond Hill and are being displaced, and some of them are going to be forced to sell their homes and other things. So the ramifications of this are hitting home, and I wish everybody well, and I hope that we can continue to try to make sure we're giving good balance for people in Richmond Hill. So thank you.
Okay. Any good news, Councillor Munch?
Sorry, sir.
It's gonna be hot tomorrow. That's
We're summertime.
next is Deputy Mayor Pirelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As many of you know, I recently launched a Richmond Hill Shop Local campaign where residents were allowed to, there's the mask there. I just wanted to report out that I still have some masks left if members of council want to get a mask, if they haven't already done so. But 9,472 Richmond Hill residents are proudly wearing these masks. They're going around shopping local because, as you know, the pandemic has had there you go, Councillor Munch is sporting his mask. Thank you, Councillor Munch. And I just wanted to let everybody know that it's a tremendous success. We've had a little competition. People are sending in their photos out in the community wearing the masks and shopping local. And it's just little prizes. We're giving out T-shirts and Tim Hortons gift cards, nothing big, but it shows some spirit in these times of unprecedented lockdowns and so on and so forth. So please, if you can, encourage your residents to shop locals so that can help our small businesses survive until we get through this together. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. So then we move on to the next item is the introduction of time-sensitive matters. Does any member of council have anything to introduce? Okay, I don't see any. I do have, I would like to add a time-sensitive closed session matter to the agenda to consider personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, and to receive advice that is solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose pertaining to a contract for services. So can I ask another member to move and second to add this item for me? Okay, thank you, Councillor Munch. And Councillor West, seconded. So thank you very much. So moved by Councillor Munch, seconded by Councillor West, the introduction of a time-sensitive closed session matter. Deputy Mayor Pirelli?
Yes, can we get some details as to the general nature of this request to ascertain whether it's...
No, because it's going to be discussed in closed session. We're unable to say any more than what I have said, that it pertains to an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employee, and to the receiving of advice. So Okay, I don't see any other speakers. We'll put it to a vote. All those in favor? Okay, that's, okay, that carries. Thank you very much. So we move then into the adoption of the agenda. Okay, I have Councillor Chan willing to move an adoption. Okay, before we do that, now for electronic meeting security reasons, and because we already have a special council meeting to consider closed session matters, in adopting the agenda, can I ask that we refer my time-sensitive closed session matter to the special council meeting immediately following this meeting? And can I ask a member to move and adopt the agenda with that referral? Thank you, Councillor Chan. And Councillor Liu, thank you. Any discussion on the adoption of the agenda? The referral of the time-sensitive matter to the special council meeting? I see none. All those in favor? That carries. Very good. So we move on to presentations, and we do have one presentation.
Sorry, pardon me, Acting Mayor, we do need to do disclosure.
Okay. Skipped an item there. Does any member have a disclosure of pecuniary interest, and please state the general nature thereof? I see none. Okay. Do we need a motion to move the adoption of previous council minutes? And thank you, Councillor West. We have just one council meeting held February 24th. See number assigned 07-21. Councillor West is moving. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Silovitz. Okay, any discussion on that? All in favor? Okay, is anyone opposed? That carries. Now we move to items that we need to identify that require separate discussion. Does any members of council want to pull an item to discuss from the consent agenda? I don't see any at all. So, okay, we'll move to adopt the remainder of the agenda items. Item 13.1 will be discussed because there's a presentation involved. So can I have a mover for the remainder of the agenda items? Councillor West and Deputy Mayor Pirelli. Any discussion? All in favor? That carries. Very, very good. Okay, there are no public hearings today. And now we move to presentations. Okay, the first presentation is by Anne-Marie Ferrugia, Manager of Parks Operation, to myself, Acting Mayor De Paula, and members of council regarding the city's tree City of the World recognition. This is something we're very proud of. I can see Anne-Marie there. Go ahead with your presentation.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Acting Mayor and members of council. On behalf of city staff, partners, and community volunteers who care for our urban forest, I'm very happy and proud to inform you that Richmond Hill has been named a Tree City of the World by the Arbor Day Foundation and the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. We were recognized for our council and city's commitment to growing and maintaining our urban forest. With this recognition, Richmond Hill becomes one of 15 cities in Canada and 120 cities worldwide to receive this international honor. The program's goal is to connect like-minded cities around the world who recognize the importance of trees in building healthy and resilient communities. Our strong urban forest management foundation is possible as a result of the many approaches, policies, and practices we have developed and implemented to maintain a healthy urban forest. Some examples include Richmond Hill's Urban Forest Management Plan, which guides the responsible management of the 2.6 million trees and shrubs that make up our city's urban forest. We also have several tree establishment programs, including the award-winning Community Stewardship and Healthy Arts programs, the city's Urban Forestry Operations Street and Park Tree Planting Program, Tree planting is part of capital projects such as road reconstruction, park development, and capital woodlot restoration projects, and planting through the development process in accordance with the city's urban forest planting guidelines. In addition to tree planting, the city has several programs and policies in place to protect our trees, including a block pruning program that helps to mitigate risk and ensure long-term health of our city trees, and bylaws that protect large and historically significant trees in our community. We have also worked to incorporate urban trees and woodlands into corporate asset management planning, allowing us to make fiscally responsible decisions about city trees. And last but not least, the city has forged many valuable partnerships with businesses, agencies, nonprofit organizations, other levels of government, as well as residents and members of our community who have all helped to care for and grow our urban forest over many years. This international recognition would not be possible without the support and direction of council and the cross-corporate efforts and dedication of staff across the city, many who are here with us virtually today, who have worked together to protect and grow and maintain our urban forest. Thank you and congratulations to all.
Thank you very. Oh.
You are on, Mr. Acting Mayor. You're through.
Thank you very much, Anne Marie. And I'm just going to receive that plaque that you're presenting me. There we go.
Thank you.
Put it up here so everyone can see. Very proud to receive this on behalf of the members of council. It's quite an honor and a distinction to be recognized from the Arbor Day Foundation and from the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. You know, there's only so many countries and cities in the world that have got this distinction. So it's fabulous for Richmond Hill. Only 14 in Canada, I believe. So great work to all our staff that are involved in all those initiatives and the protection of our urban forest. Congratulations. It's a proud moment for Richmond Hill. Thank you. Okay. Our second presentation, I'm going to introduce our city manager, Mary Ann Dempster, to introduce the next presenter. Go ahead, Ms. Dempster.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. Good afternoon, Council. In 2020, we embarked on a brand strategy approach to naming rights. John Lantier was hired to manage this initiative. This is a partnership with the Richmond Hill Public Library, capitalizing on the skill sets the library CEO brings to the city. We see the city as a whole, and instead of both organizations embarking separately, we are doing this together as one voice to the market. Mr. Lantier is here to provide an update on the approach, and we have a request to update the current council policy for your consideration. Additionally, we want to gain clarity on the authority to renaming libraries. The city owns the buildings and the library board is accountable for the operations. This time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Lantier to start the presentation.
That's great. Thank you very much, Mary Ann. Everybody can hear me okay? Good. Okay, good afternoon, Acting Mayor and members of council. Thank you so much for having me here today. The purpose of my presentation is to take you through the recommendations of Staff Report SRCM 21.02 that was submitted for this meeting. And as Ms. Dempster mentioned, the Brand Partnership Initiative was created last year to help execute on Council's strategic priority of fiscal responsibility and is charged with generating ancillary revenue for the city to help fund new and future growth. Next slide, please. Today, I'll focus on the proposed amendments to the city's naming rights policy. With help from the city's legal team, the other recommendations included in the report are presented as the most appropriate way to recognize that the library's facilities are excluded from the city's policy, but are included in the Brand Partnership Initiative. We therefore recommend that council direct the library to create its own policy and exercise governance over agreements for its facilities. Next slide, please. The recommended changes to the policy will serve to help the Brand Partnership Initiative succeed while ensuring that the appropriate oversight and processes remain in place for the city's benefit. Clarity around changes to roles and accountabilities are spelled out, as well as processes for approvals of proposals and agreements. The recommendations remove overlaps with other policies where appropriate, and also better define some of the elements that will make up brand partnership agreements. I'll touch on the rationale for these recommendations now. Next slide, please. Development of the brand partnership initiative served as a catalyst to create new structure and strategy to optimize potential for revenue generation. Accountability for the program moved to the city manager's office, and a cross-functional advisory committee was created to help guide and implement strategy. Activity for securing agreements has shifted to a proactive approach, where partnerships will be pursued through a targeted and focused sales effort. The recommendations allow for a more fluid pursuit of these partnerships without sacrificing the authority that council must have over final approvals. To help us develop a more relevant offering for potential partners who are looking to engage their target consumers, our approach will meet market expectations by allowing them to activate their brands beyond putting their name on a building. Input for these strategies and recommendations came from analyzing our current policies, looking at best practices in other municipalities like Brampton, Markham, Calgary, Ottawa, amongst many others, various internal stakeholders, as well as industry organizations like the Sponsorship Marketing Council of Canada. Next slide, please. Foundational work to move the initiative forward has been taking place with great help from numerous resources within the city. The go-to-market sales presentation is well underway, and data collected from the recreation, transportation and traffic, and library teams is helping to create individual facility valuations. A prospect list of approximately 150 companies is in place, categorized as per the slide, and the policy recommendations expand the list of excluded categories to include cannabis and vaping products. Next slide, please. The list of facilities being targeted for partnerships is extensive and includes most of the city's popular recreation locations. The alignment of goals between the potential partner and the city will be the key determinant in deciding which facility to work with. From there, agreements that benefit all stakeholders, i.e. the city, its residents, and the brand, will be negotiated and presented to council for approval. Next slide, please. Recognizing that buildings already named in tribute exist throughout the city, we have been exploring alternative naming treatments that incorporate a partner's brand while maintaining the significance of the recognition. There are a number of options, with a few of them presented here. Next slide, please. Here, the sponsor treatment welcomes the public to Ed Sackfield Arena and Fitness Center with new signage that currently does not exist. Next slide, please. Using the existing signage, in this example, the partner presents Ed Sackfield Arena and Fitness Center to the public. Next slide, please. Finally, here is another variation where the brand is in a secondary position. In this case, Ed Sackfield Arena and Fitness Center is presented as powered by the partner. As you can see, the goal is to tastefully incorporate the potential partner and, where applicable, maintain the significance of the original name. Next slide, please. Our program is developed to support council's priority of fiscal responsibility through generating ancillary revenues. Our strategic approach to this is to present our program to the market as a multi-layered media platform that leverages numerous integrated elements, of which naming rights is one. The ultimate goal of the initiative is to generate new and recurring value for all stakeholders involved: economic and social growth for the city, brand reach and strength for our partners, and enhanced programs and experiences for the residents of Richmond Hill. Next slide, please. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions you might have. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lantier. Members of council, you have questions for the presenter? Deputy Mayor Pirelli?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Mr. Lantier, for the presentation. I had a question on page, I believe it was page 5.
Of the staff report, sir?
No, the screens you just presented. If somebody could put up page 5, that would be great. I'm just curious why you have an excluded category. Is it suggested that any businesses that want to support this program that sell alcohol, tobacco, legal products? Obviously, pornography is not legal. I can see why pornography is there. I can see derogatory portrayals. I'm not sure what you mean by weapons. I guess in the criminal code, anything used in the commission of a crime could be considered a weapon. But alcohol, religious messaging, political messaging, cannabis, for all intents and purposes, is legal now, and vaping is as well. So I'm just curious, so if we were to support an initiative like this, would we be exposing ourselves to any kind of litigious action for discriminating against legal businesses from partaking in this program? Through you, Mr. Chairman.
And through you, Acting Mayor, apart from cannabis and vaping, the other categories were included in the original policy that was approved back in 2017. So we didn't feel the need to change those at this particular time. And really, the exterior of buildings and potentially naming a building with the particular brand is, can potentially be a sensitive route. And so we wanted to make sure that we are looking at safe products. It doesn't exclude us from working with these particular categories, and alcohol as one particular example for the interior of facilities or other sponsorship opportunities with the city. This was just really in reference to the outside naming of a building.
Okay, sorry, I guess I'll rephrase the question, maybe
Okay.
through you, Mr. Chairman, to our legal staff. If we were to support this program for the external naming of buildings and excluding religious messaging or alcohol or these types of things, would we be putting ourselves in any kind of a litigious situation? Like a financial institution, for example, could put down powered by the Royal Bank. The Royal Bank was found guilty of insider trading years back. Maybe not something we might want to be associating ourselves with either, but like criminal activity. But Coors Light, the silver bullet, for example, for those that like a cold beer on a hot summer's day, may not see a problem with that. So my question is not about imposing my moral compass on business. My question is one of a legal question, through you, Mr. Chairman, to our legal staff. Has the consideration of litigious action for excluding a legal business from partaking in the program been considered, and what was the outcome?
Okay, I see our city solicitor, Mr. DeMilta is here. Go ahead, Mr. DeMilta.
Thank you. Through you, Acting Mayor DePella. If it's council's desire to seek a legal opinion in terms of whether those categories, pornography, weapons, or alcohol, is something that the city would like to see advertised in one of the facilities, then it's a complicated issue. Each one of them is governed by a separate piece of legislation. I know off the top of my head, in terms of tobacco, tobacco is federally regulated under the Tobacco Act, which it prohibits advertising. So certainly on the other categories, if it's council's desire to include those in terms of the potential advertisers for facilities such as the library, where the majority are, for example, alcohol, where it's not easily ascertained that the majority are of legal drinking age, in terms of having that type of advertising in those facilities, the majority of council can direct a legal report to be brought back on the categories that could potentially be included. But I would need a direction from the majority of council to bring a report back on those specific categories to be included, because it's a very complicated issue.
The question was, can any of these groups come to us and accuse us of discriminating by excluding them from.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for clarifying that. Yes, let me rephrase the question again, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Mr. DeMilta, the question was not how to include those categories. The question was, can they accuse us of any discriminatory action by excluding them? Has that been considered? And what has been the outcome?
Sorry, through you, Acting Mayor DePaula. Certainly, it's from my point of view, it's the other side of the coin. So, for example, the tobacco companies. Tobacco is a federally regulated product, and in the Tobacco Act, there's a prohibition against advertising. So it'd be difficult for me to see how a tobacco company could pursue the city for not advertising in a facility such as a library when federally there's a prohibition against it. So certainly if there's the other categories that a legal opinion is required on, whether it's weapons to be advertised or pornography to be advertised, I would need a resolution directing legal to bring back a report on each one of those separate categories. It's very complicated, each one, and then it would be a legal opinion on those.
But do they have a right to accuse us of discriminating?
That's
if
the question.
If a church wants to be on one of our buildings, can they say it's not fair that we're excluding them?
Again, through you, Acting Mayor DePaula, I've considered it off the top of my head in terms of any of those. So certainly I can't see it at this point in time how one of them could pursue us on the opportunities, given that it's sort of a contractual relationships that we're entering into that are negotiated with two sides about the relationship that's governed by that contract. So it'd be difficult for me here to see how a potential action could be framed that tobacco or weapon company or pornography company saying that they were unjustifiably excluded from advertising on the outside of our buildings. So again, I never say never in terms of anybody can sue anybody, but I have a difficult time in seeing how that would be framed at this point.
Well, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much.
Okay.
I guess my question hasn't really been answered, but that's okay.
I think Mr. Lantern wants to take a stab at it.
Yeah, if you don't mind, through you, Mr. Acting Mayor, it's not uncommon in the media world, which is where I come from, for these categories to be called out as as categories that we need to be wary of, but not necessarily not pursue. At the end of the day, it's at the city's discretion whether they want to do business with advertisers within these categories. But it's really, we were calling this out as an addition to the existing policy for the outside of buildings.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lanthier, for that. Again, I guess I'll just state my concern. Since I didn't really get an answer, it seemed the city solicitor wanted to focus on weapons and pornography, which I was fairly clear that I don't think anybody wants any association with those types of illegal activities. But as the acting mayor pointed out, if a religious organization would want to say, for example, Ed Sackfield Origin, powered by the power of the Lord Jesus Christ, something like that. The question was very simple question. We need to consider that if we're going to open this up for tendering or for bidding, then not for bid, but for the bidding process, that we want to know that, what we're doing is legal, and that notwithstanding the fact that we can enter into a contract with anybody that we like, I don't think we have the right as a municipality to violate people's human rights and the ability to do business based on some kind of discrimination. For example, discriminating against a religious organization would be discrimination based on religion. And I don't think that's allowed in the human rights. So I just want to make sure that going forward, we're keeping the best interests of the city in mind. That's all I'm saying. So before we start to exclude things, we don't even have to mention exclusion if it's our right to deal with whoever we want. So Just thoughts to consider when we're going through this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Sorry you didn't, weren't satisfied with the answer there. I think as long as we're excluding groups and we're not saying one church can advertise and another church can't, I think that's discriminatory. And I think we're in our rights to exclude groups, but I'm not a lawyer. Deputy Mayor, sorry you didn't get an answer there. Next speaker is Councillor Silovitz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Mr. Lantier, for your presentation, and to our city manager. And just one question that I have, I may have missed it reading through all the documents, but the question I have, and through you, Mr. Mayor, probably to our city manager, the only reference I can find to finance is on page 405, Appendix 2, where it says Finance Division will manage the invoicing, any incoming funds associated with the naming rights agreement, issue tax receipts in accordance with Revenue Canada and regulations where applicable. My question is, to which account is this money going to be processed? And for what are we going to be using this money afterwards?
Okay, well, the city manager is probably best able to answer that.
Through you, Acting Mayor, thank you, Councillor Slovitz, for the question. It's a good question. We have an account in the city manager's office where there's an expectation of revenue, and that's where the costs associated with this program is offset. In year one, our goal is to break even. And then in year two, we are in the midst of the pandemic, but we're hoping that in year one, we will break even. But any revenue generated after the break even point will be put aside for council. Will be put aside in a reserve at the end of the year for council consideration. We do have an arrangement with the library after costs for them to have the portion related to their operations put in a reserve for decision making in the future. They have reserves as well. So there will be any revenue generated by the library component after expenses will be put in their reserve. Any revenue generated on the city's behalf after expenses will be put in a reserve for our council to decide how they want that to be spent moving forward.
Thank you, City Manager Dempster. That satisfies my query. As long as it is council who at the end of the day is going to make that decision. That's the most important thing. And I think in reference to the previous speaker's question about whether or not it's applicable or appropriate or legal, I think at the end of the day, when council is the last body to make a decision as to whether or not a specific name is to be used, I would imagine that at that point, that discussion will take place and that a decision made will also clearly reference that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Next speaker is Councillor Munch.
Good day, thank you. Just some questions. So if we go down this path and we do naming rights in this manner, and we're going to tender, somebody receives that tender, they want to put a communication up on one of the buildings. Is there an approval process of which the message is done? Is that the expectation that we're going to be going through an approval guideline?
Through you, Mr. Acting Mayor, Councillor, if I could ask you to just clarify, do you mean the look of what's going to end up being on a building?
Could be the look, could be the statement, could be the colors, it could be the font. Yes. Could be a picture. In any way, shape, or form, is there an approval of their messaging before it actually gets put onto the facility?
Yes, sir. It's all part and parcel of the entire agreement that would be negotiated. Any element, including the signage and whatever that signage would look like, would be part of the agreement, and council is to approve any agreement before it becomes final.
So if we have a party that comes forward and says, okay, I want to put a Staples sign up. I use that as an example. Staples is a great head office, Richmond Hill Company. So Staples wants to put something up on a building, and they say, well, you know what? We'd like to use the size of a font of 35 feet. You say, ooh, 35 feet is going to be monumental. And we say, I'm sorry, our bylaw says basically you can only have a certain restriction. Well, I'd like to do 35 feet. Is there a mechanism whereby we would say, sorry, those are the guidelines, black and white, that's it, doesn't fit? Or do we do a process of engagement? How would that work?
So through you, Mr. Acting Mayor, the advisory committee that's been put together with different resources throughout the city, including the city manager and the CEO of the library, are in place to guide that process and sort of guide the negotiation. The one thing that I would want to make clear is that, you know, we are, and I mentioned it before, we are sort of proactively going out and seeking these partnerships and setting the expectation of what that partnership is going to look like. So as opposed to a process where the potential partner comes to us with a number of demands, we have a strategy that the advisory committee has worked on. We'll take a proposal to a potential partner that we know will work for us. And then once we're at that negotiated stage, we would bring it to you for approval. Totally understanding your question. You know, if I was to bring it right down to the root, when you say, is it black and white, we would say no. The answer would be yes. If that was the point of, you know, non-negotiable for them needed to be a 35-foot sign, we'd have difficulty continuing.
Okay. Again, I would hope that we would have some level of compassion. I understand rules and guidelines, some compassion. So if we have a community group that wants to do something, put a sign up, and it's going to truly be a partner in there, I would say to you, there's a great opportunity to also hybrid our signing strategy and looking for the dignity and the look and the style. But I want to make sure that we also are working with the market conditions. And actually, if we have community partners, and we could define what a community partner is, but it's a little bit of a gray area. It's a really tough movement. But I say again, it's a big difference between advertising and other places do it, including the United States and side of highways. We don't do that here. Buildings, that's done in Toronto, not so much here, but all these things are a work in process. Maybe it's you know, we work on a phasing, but all good. As long as we're making sure we're not being negligent, I think that'd be number one. I would encourage us always to get a legal outside opinion for liability reasons and make sure we're following guidelines that are consistent with other municipalities, and maybe not just copying them, but actually making sure we're vetting them. And maybe we should put that as part of the contract. Say, hey, you know, you guys, if you're going to do this, it has to go through a legal process. You're going to pay for that. We're not, taxpayers aren't going to pay for that, but the applicant is going to do that to make sure we get a third party opinion. You know, that'd be, I encourage. I think we need to look at these avenues. I think having an Air Canada Center or, you know, a Staples Center or Scotiabank, I would love that. I would like to have a weighted promote. So if you get multiple people coming forward, I would say that if it was a Staples as opposed to a, you know, another body that wasn't outside here, I'd hope we show some favoritism or some weighting with regards to some of our local businesses. Try to encourage some pride and give us some benefit to Richmond Hill. But that would be my, you know, little slant on that, where I would do my weighted average and each to his own. I would say to you, with regards to making sure we follow all guidelines, has to be done with regards to federal guidelines with regard to tobacco, gaming, what have you. And that may be changing, and that we're consistent in line, that we're following our fabric of our branding. That's only my standpoint. I applaud the opportunity to try to consider being innovative. And, you know, I wish everybody all the best. I think it's the right shape for the best interest long-term of our facilities and our organization, as also done tactfully and within our guidelines, both bureaucratically and politically. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Munch. Councillor West?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I will start off by saying thank you, Mr. Lantier. You and I had a conversation a few days ago, and a lot of the concerns that I had at that time, I've dialed them back a little bit. So thank you. I mean, I have to be honest. I probably said pretty much the same thing when we passed this policy in the first place. I'm not a big fan of this. However, having said that, and through conversations with you, Mr. Lantier, and others, I mean, I get that at the end of the day, council will be still the final authority in approving or not approving anything that we do or don't do with this policy. And that does give me, I think, enough comfort to, you know, go along to get along. And that's fine. I mean, in fairness, I think there are some opportunities where sponsorship in our facilities will benefit us as a community, but they'll also benefit our local business, which is good for business as well. So I think, all of those kind of positive opportunities, I think we should be going after, and that's great. I guess, some of the conversation that started off this today about, for example, the excluded businesses, those are the kinds of the part of the mud that I don't want us to get stuck in this policy. And it's one of the many reasons why I can use my imagination and think of discomfort that could happen in certain potential naming rights opportunities that we have. So I think we really do need to be careful, and we need to be, very low key on what we end up doing in this. There are also companies that are on the allowed list that I think, I would have some reservations in having them name a building. And I guess the other thing, we've seen with naming rights in the last little while too, is that it's a two-way street, that, there can be baggage for the municipality, with the company that's naming it. And I suppose the opposite could also be true. So anyway, I'm happy to support this. I think that there is a good backstop in this procedure, and I think we are going about it in a logical and cautious way, and I will be able to support it. But I do want to make my comments known that I think we do need to be very thoughtful and careful on how we go forward if we're going forward. So those would be my comments. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor West. Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and also thank you very much for the presentation. I have two questions. So first of all, I'm always in support of this naming policy. In terms of revenue, it's always good to have revenue for the city. How much are we talking about here? I don't know if we have a rate card already, or is the next step, because for all the work we've done here, it's better justified, with all the efforts.
So through you, Mr. Acting Mayor, I can try and answer that question specifically without being specific, to be honest with you, because there are a variety of factors that would go into the calculation. What we're really looking at is trying to put in place a revenue foundation, a recurring revenue foundation. Most of the municipalities are looking at 5, 10, 15 plus year arrangements to facilitate this recurring revenue. And so, as the city manager mentioned, our goal is to cover the costs in year 1 and expand on that in year 2. With regards to the individual facilities themselves, we're taking a data-driven approach as well as a market-driven approach to creating the value for it. And we really are in the process of reaching a final value. So a lot of it depends. The data side is how many people use the facility, book the facility, drive by the facility, walk by the facility. Those are all data points that a potential partner in the media world will be judging us against other potential investments. And also, from a market-driven standpoint, what are other municipalities charging for similar types of buildings? And frankly, what is the market willing to pay? I mean, all of these go into what we think we can, the value that we can extract from a singular facility. Keeping in mind also the last slide that I presented really shows that we're trying to take a holistic view of this and go beyond just the name on the building. And so it really comes down to, how deep can we get with that particular partner in order to extract max revenue? So I don't have a number that I would peg to a wall in this moment, other than the way that the city manager positioned it.
Thank you very much. Fair enough. So are we referencing our neighboring municipalities? Do we know how much they're charging? We take that into reference, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, we do. And sorry, through you, Mr. Acting Mayor, there are a lot of resources out there. There are a lot of, within this media world, there are associations, there are membership groups and there's a lot of sharing of information. The most recent example is the retailer Healthy Planet renamed an arena in Peterborough for $25,000 a year for 10 years. That's an example of the type of arrangement that they were able to make. And quite frankly, Peterborough is significantly smaller than Richmond Hill. So that, you know, that's an example.
Thank you. Very good. Very good. Last questions along the line. You know, I agree with Deputy Mayor's concern about, you know, we're trying to exclude some, you know, categories. And I can see in Appendix 2, we have restrictions and evaluation criteria. So I don't know if it's the right thing to do or just take away the restrictions, just have the evaluation criteria to take us out of trouble. Just a suggestion, because I have another, you know, category I would like to include into the restrictions, which is casino. I don't see casino in that excluded category. So just for the record, you know, for your consideration too. So that's all my comments. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Liu. Were you moving a motion to add an additional item for exclusion? No. Okay. You're satisfied that we have that evaluation opportunity as council? Okay. I don't see any other speakers. So thank you very much for the presentation. That's it for questions. Now, we don't have any presentations, so we move forward to the adoption of the remainder of we move to discussing items that were separated, and this staff report is the only item that has been separated for discussion. So we move right into it. I'll say that the staff has a recommended motion, but I would like to offer up an amendment in item number B, 11.2, recommendation B. I'll read into the record, then I'll maybe ask the clerk to put it on the screen. I'd like to amend, I'd like to move a motion or have someone move a motion that includes a different B than what you see in the staff report. And I'll read it out, that the Richmond Hill Public Library Board be authorized, subject to the provisions of the city's naming rights policy and council's final approval, to solicit, negotiate, and administer naming right agreements for the interior and exterior of city libraries on behalf of the city. So that obviously the library board, if the clerk could put that on the screen, that'd be great. The library board is doing an excellent job in managing our operations, you know, as better than anyone could have expected, and saving us a lot of money, contributing to the city's bottom line and helping us get to that zero tax rate. And now being a partner here, the CEO at the library is to be commended for partnering with the city to seek additional revenue through the use of this policy. But I just feel that the city built those buildings, the city paid for those buildings, and the city owns those buildings. And, you know, I trust the library board will do a great job in getting and negotiating advertisers on the exterior of those buildings. But I believe it's important for council to exert an option for a final approval process, that before these agreements are entered into, that Richmond Hill City Council approves those contracts. So that's what I'd like to see as an alternative motion. Is someone willing to move that? It's the staff recommendations with an alter. Are you wanting to move it, Councillor Deputy Mayor Pirelli?
No, Mr. Chairman.
No? Okay. Councillor Silovitz?
I would like to
I'll
say,
move it.
Thank you. I just want to get a
I'll move
motion
it.
on the floor. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Silovitz. Is there a seconder for that? Anyone willing to second the alternative motion that I proposed? Thank you, Councillor Munch. Okay, so that's moved and seconded on the floor. And did the movers and seconders want to speak first?
No, I completely agree with you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Councillor Munch as seconder.
I'm good, thanks.
Okay, so Deputy Mayor Pirelli, you wanted to speak to this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It seems to we're rushing through this a little bit too fast for my liking. I noticed a little bit of a perplexity amongst my colleagues here. There was some questions that I raised around the legality of what we're proposing. I think it would be prudent at this time, Mr. Chairman, to maybe refer this back to our legal staff to get the answers to those questions that City Solicitor DeMilta was speaking of, to make sure that we're not starting off on the wrong foot. Want to make sure that we're okay, that we set the framework and the foundation. I don't believe that I heard a comment that as long as we're discriminating, not verbatim, but as long as we're excluding all religions or religious messaging, that we would be okay with that. I don't think that we're ready to make that comment until such time as we get a legal opinion. So I would move that we refer this back to our legal staff to get a legal opinion on that question I have, Mr. Chairman, for whatever we feel is an appropriate time. Maybe we can ask Mr. DeMilta what an appropriate response time would be to get a legal opinion on both what I mentioned and as well what Councillor West mentioned, the included groups versus the excluded groups and the legality of those, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, City Manager, I saw your hand up. Do you want to address that?
Thanks. Yes, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't speak to the legal opinion, but in dealing with these types of policies, council is in charge of you're responsible for your brand and what types of companies that you're going to allow to participate in this type of programming. And I can say it's pretty common that family-friendly organizations do not allow advertising for items such as alcohol, tobacco, cannabis, vaping. I see your point in the religious messaging. I think that would be a choice of all council. It's not discriminatory if you're treating everyone the same. Discriminating, I agree with the comments. It would be if we isolated one group out. However, what I would like to mention is that we are almost ready to go to market, and our ability to generate funds and break even this year hinges upon the timeline we've set. So if we do hold this up for potentially the excluded list, I'd ask for council consideration to pass the rust so that we can go to market and we can come back with the answers to the questions on the excluded side.
Deputy Mayor Pirelli, you have the floor still.
Thank you. Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I don't know why we heard from the city manager regarding this. I thought my amendment was clear. I want to move a referral back to city solicitor to get a legal opinion on the legalities of excluding and including groups. Notwithstanding all of the commentary that was made by the city manager, I want to know that we're not going to expose ourselves to a lawsuit because we've said that all religious groups cannot participate in this program. So I just want a legal opinion. If someone can assure me from staff that everything we're doing is perfectly legal, then I'm happy to do so. But I simply can't vote in favor of something that potentially appears to me, and that's why I'm asking for legal opinion to see if, the fact that we want to get to market, Mr. Chairman and members of council, quickly should not stop us from making certain that what we're doing is legal. So that is my amendment, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, well, it's your prerogative to move a referral to next council meeting. Is that what you're saying?
I want to refer.
However long it takes to get the.
I want to refer back to staff for a legal opinion on the legalities of whether excluding any group is legal, or including some groups as being potentially litigious as well. So maybe, Mr. DeMilta can give us an idea of how long it would take to get such legal opinion so that we can make an informed decision.
Sure, the staff report was vetted through legal. Our city solicitor is here. I'll accept it for a referral motion if there's a second here, but city solicitor, do you want to comment?
Certainly. So through you, Acting Mayor DePaula, there were various excluded categories. So a few of them I answered. For example, tobacco. Tobacco is a federally regulated product and you cannot advertise tobacco. So that one there I can answer publicly and without having to go back in a legal opinion. Now, on some of the other items, Deputy Mayor Pirelli said I was focusing on. So if it's council's desire, I heard pornography, or is it I'm not researching pornography in terms of at city facilities? Because certainly the overarching opinion was that it's a contract, so you can contract and do business with who you like in terms of that. So if it's only the religious section, I think Deputy Mayor Pirelli's example was I can't remember the facility, but powered by Jesus Christ or the Church of Jesus Christ. So certainly there may be litigation if council were to choose to accept such an advertisement for the reasons that I could get into, but it was in the Supreme Court of Canada and the fact that we're a secular society that divides church and state. So certainly I'm happy to go back should council direct me to do a fulsome legal opinion on that excluded category. But some of the other ones, for example, alcohol. I know that there's restrictions on the advertising of alcohol where there's a certain proportion of the population that's patronizing that facility that's not of the legal drinking age. So certainly that's something I can go back and research. But as the city manager has indicated, that certain of these categories would be excluded for these reasons, for various reasons in terms of contracts that were going out to solicit and negotiate and to administer. But certainly the final decision as the motion on the floor is that council has final say with respect to each and every contract that they enter into. And if there is a candidate that comes forward, certainly I'm happy to provide a legal opinion at that point in time for a specific example, as opposed to all these various categories that I'm trying to deal with at the same time. So.
Thank you, Mr. DeMilta. Through you, Mr. Chairman. I'm fairly confident in Mr. DeMilta's statement that council free to enter into any contract it wants with whomever it wants. But I'm fairly confident that the city solicitor would also agree that council does not have authority to contract outside of the law. And if it was deemed that it would be discriminatory to prevent someone for a church, for example, from buying the naming rights, then we would have a problem. And I don't believe council has the right to contract outside of the law. But that being said, Mr. Chairman, I'm fairly confident that the city solicitor, of course, absolutely, we know there's laws against pornography. We know there's laws against the advertising of tobacco and alcohol and all of those things. There's just, thank you. There's just some categories that are on the edge. And I just wanted to make sure, as long as city solicitor can assure us that this has been properly vetted and that there's still more vetting to come the near future on a case-by-case basis, I'm happy to withdraw my referral back to the city solicitor. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Are there any of the speakers that, did I have Councillor Barrow say? Did I see your hand up or your request to speak sign?
It was. The motion has been withdrawn, so my comments are no longer necessary at this point.
Okay, it was regarding referral. Okay, anybody else want to speak to the staff report or to the motion? I don't see any, so I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Okay, that motion carries. Okay, thank you. So we move along. That was the only item there. We haven't, the proclamation was made. So any members of council have other business they want to address at this time? Or we don't do that? Okay. We've already talked about emergency sensitive matters. We just need the movers for the bylaws. We have 3 bylaws, 16.1, 16.2, and 16.3. Councillor West. And I need a seconder for the 3 bylaws. Councillor Silovitz. Okay, all in favor? Any discussion? All in favor? Okay, that carries. We're not moving into closed session now. We have a completely separate meeting to do that. I just need a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at this meeting. Councillor West and Councillor Liu. Any discussion? All in favor? That carries. I need a motion for adjournment from Councillor Munch and Deputy Mayor Pirelli. All in favor? That carries. Okay. Council meeting stands.